Hey everyone, welcome to the 5th episode of Get Baked. Get Baked is a really cool culinary show that features the funnest people, the coolest people in baking that we can find. I am Babette Pepai. I am one of the co-hosts of Get Baked. I am the founder of BakeSpace.com. If you're looking for recipes or want to create your own cookbook, definitely head over to BakeSpace.com after the show. But make sure you watch the show. We're all about chocolate today. I want to also introduce my co-host, Nichelle Stevens. Nichelle, what's going on in Atlanta?
Well, we had a little bit of a cold spell, but it's going to warm up. So hopefully spring is happening. Spring is on the horizon.
We were just talking about your lawn the other day, and we're like, we've never seen a lawn so beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous.
Well, that's the thing. My mom has started to plant some roses and azaleas, and we had to cover them up last night because it dropped below freezing. So.
Now, are you guys, because Easter's coming up, is Cupcakes Take the Cake, do you guys have a ton of like chocolate recipes that you guys are featuring, or what's happening on the blog?
Probably more just Easter cupcakes. I think the cool thing about Easter and cupcakes is shredded coconut. So you'll see shredded coconut become green, and all of a sudden it's Easter grass, and you could put little chocolates on top of it. So I think it's interesting how you can see what could be done with cupcakes based on the holiday.
Well, you're definitely the expert, so we definitely know. Now, I want to make sure we introduce some of our participants. Now, if you at home are watching, or if you're we're actually doing a Meerkat stream as well. Let me see if I can show you guys. Hello! What's funny is my Google Plus, for some reason, my Hangout is not, it's not changing to my screen on my screens, but it's changing to everyone else. So I'm going to hope that the Google Plus gods are working in our favor, and it's working right. But we're also streaming on Meerkat as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, welcome. We're happy to have you. If you want to participate in the chat, go to Twitter and use the hashtag GetBaked, or send us a message through our Meerkat feed with the GetBaked hashtag, because we're going to be following that as well. If you're on Google Plus or YouTube, leave a comment on our feed, and we will make sure that we get these questions asked. Now, today's show is about chocolate baking. It's about brownies and cookies and cakes and all the cool things that you're going to make with chocolate. And then also, you're part of the conversation. So if there is something that sparks your interest, or if there's something that you've been wanting to ask, do not wait until the end of the show. You just raise your hand and you just send us a tweet, and we'll make sure we get that question answered. So let me introduce our guest today. We have Judith Lewis, who is mostly about chocolate.com. And Judith, you're in London right now?
I'm close to London. I'm actually in Oxfordshire.
Wow. So are you guys, I mean, are you preparing, because chocolate, Easter, I mean, this is like your Super Bowl.
It's the biggest sort of chocolate time of the year for me. So when I'm in the run up to Easter, there's more chocolate than Christmas or Valentine's Day or any other holiday of the year.
Now, how did you get started with your blog?
A number of years ago, I just thought that I kept giving people advice about the best chocolate. I kept letting them know when they asked me what my favorite was, and I kept updating a personal kind of business site, and then I thought, this is what a blog is for, actually, and so I started blogging about chocolate. Since then, I've gone on to judge the Academy Chocolate Awards and the International Chocolate Awards, and I still get asked what my favorite chocolate is. And if you're wondering,
yeah,
it's Noisy Chocolate in the States. They're out of Missouri, and they make some amazing chocolate.
Well, will you tweet to them in our hashtag GetBaked so that we can all follow them, or we can figure out where we can track down that chocolate? Because I think if it's your favorite, I think it has to be good.
Absolutely, it is fantastic for either baking with or eating just right out of the bag.
Awesome. Now let's see. Our next guest is Kelly. Now, Kelly, how do you say your last name? Is it Brozyna? Brozyna. Is that Russian?
It's Polish.
Polish. Now, how did you come up with the Spunky Coconut website?
It started about 7 years ago because my daughters were having problems, autism and growth problems, and then I found out that I had celiac disease, And so I started creating recipes that just met our family's needs and wanted to share them, wanted to have a sense of community, and have now published several cookbooks, including a paleo chocolate lovers cookbook.
And do you have it there? Can you show it to us?
Here it is, the Paleo Chocolate Lovers Cookbook, and that's a crepe cake on the cover.
That looks amazing. That looks so... What's your favorite chocolate?
Brand or?
I have never heard of that.
Are you asking my favorite brand or my favorite recipe?
No, favorite brand.
My new favorite is a raw chocolate called Pure 7. And they use honey, and it's only, it's 85%, so mostly chocolate. I also really like eating Evolved, which is another raw one. And then for tempered chocolate, these are two of my favorite guys, Green and Black, and this Equal Exchange, Equal Exchange. And those are nice because they're also soy-free, so a lot of my readers have allergies and intolerances.
That's awesome. I love the packaging.
Yeah, they're nice.
It's like chocolate not only has Evolved, but like the branding behind the chocolate. Some folks have also tuned in on Meerkat. I want to say, hey, thanks so guys for watching. This is a simulcast from a Google Hangout that we're doing. So if you have any questions, you can leave a comment, and I will make sure that during the show we get those questions asked. Let's see, Elfie Weiss. Now, Elfie, you're the founder of Cupcakes Bakes, or what's the bakery's name?
Yes, I started Cupcakes Bakes about 10 years ago, and so yes, I founded Cupcakes Bakes 10 years ago. So yeah, we make cupcakes, we make cakes, we make chocolate for Easter. It was mostly at first like a French bakery, and then I realized that, you know, living in America and I had to adapt to the American palate, and that baking is really about reminiscence, and my reminiscence of baking is not the same as people in America. So I really kind of changed hotcakes and started to do a lot of cupcakes, which at first I did not want to do. And I started to do red velvet cakes, and you know, I started to do all these things that were just not what I grew up with. But it's a true success, and it's great. And now I started to actually do a lot more French pastries and French entremets, and right now we're almost at Easter, and I'm doing, you know, the Easter eggs, and doing, you know, we call it in French the friture, which is all the little Easter fishes and shells and all that. So yeah.
Oh my God, I can just listen to your voice forever. So if I ask you like random questions, I'll be like, she's just using it as an excuse to get her to talk. And you're also the winner of Cupcake Wars. What was that experience like?
Yeah, well, I won Cupcake Wars. I was the first winner of Cupcake Wars. So basically, when I opened Hotcakes, some producers came to the bakery and asked me if I wanted to do a pilot on cupcakes. And I said, sure. You know, my first career when I was a child and a teenager used to be in TV in France. So I had a big TV show, and so TV was very natural for me to do. So I said, sure. So we did the pilot and all that. And the pilot turned out to be the first Cupcake Wars, and I won it. And it was for the Alma Awards. And so I had to do something with sweet and salty and spicy. So I did the tres leches with spicy mango and horchata whipped cream, and that was the winner. And it was great. You know, it was a fantastic way to start your business. It was a fantastic boost, you know, because all of a sudden, you know, you're on TV, and the power of TV is just undeniable. I mean, this is the best thing that could ever happen to you after 3 years of being in business, to win such a show, you know. And then after that episode, the show got bought by the Food Network, and then became that series that, you know, it's been going on for like 8 seasons now, something like that. That was great. And it was so, in a way, it was very easy for me to do, because TV is a very natural territory. So it was very, it was fun, you know, and it was kind of bringing back TV into my life, where, you know, I stopped TV because I wanted to have something very certain. I wanted certainty in my life. So I said, I'm going to open a bakery, you know, because it's going to be real tangible, you know. Every day I'm going to go to work. It's going to be open 7 days a week. There's nothing more tangible than this, right? and then all of a sudden the intangible is coming back, which is really fun.
You know, you and I, you don't realize how close we were to meeting, because I auditioned to be a judge on the pilot of Cupcake Wars.
Really?
Yeah, Natalie got it, who is Bake and Destroy, who's a really good friend of ours. And yeah, and it was just like when you said pilot, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember auditioning for that. And I'm not an actor, so they're like asking me all these questions, and I'm like, I don't think I'm that good here. But no, that was fun. That was one thing that I really wanted to do. So we would have met at some point, hopefully. Now let's go to Jess. Now Jess is the lead pastry chef at barleymash, which is a restaurant in San Diego. And what I thought was really cool about you is that the way that you were described as sweets with an adult flair.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about you?
The concept of barley mash kind of lends itself to the name. Everything that we do has booze in it in some form. So any sauce that you get has alcohol. Our braised meats have alcohol. The breads that I bake daily have alcohol. All my desserts have alcohol. Everything is booze, 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 booze. So it's kind of a unique little concept for something downtown, and it's definitely an adult flair. Yeah, for sure.
Well, Jess, you are speaking our language, because I'm actually enjoying a gin and tonic right now, which usually we have a show that goes at 5 p.m. Pacific, and we always drink on Kitchen Party, and now that we're doing a show at 2 p.m., it feels weird to do a hangout and not have a cocktail. So this is cheers to all of your recipes, for sure. Now, did we miss? We did not miss. Oh, we got Natalie. So Natalie is a good friend of mine from high school. Natalie, first of all, tell me about your love for chocolate, and tell me about this harvesting cocoa. What the heck did you do?
First of all, I did not, I haven't harvested yet. I plan to in the future at some point to have a farm. I mean, this is years down the road, but I am researching it now and trying to figure out how I can do this, because I do have family in Colombia, and at some point I would love to have a farm and just have cacao trees and, find a way to go and be the source of chocolate. So that's just something that I'm planning in the future, but unfortunately haven't harvested yet.
You lied to me. You lied to me. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
It was a fantasy, and it's something I'm trying to get to. So, yeah.
We're rooting for you. Now, for those of you who are watching on Meerkat, if you're watching on YouTube, Google+, leave a comment with the hashtag #GetBaked, and we will make sure that we get these questions answered. We're going to now go into the tips and tools and things for chocolate baking. Now, also, I just want to make sure everyone knows Natalie and I have known each other since high school, so I can give her a little bit of a rough time. So, I don't want folks to think I'm mean or anything like that. So, Natalie, I appreciate you joining us on the show. Now, let's first talk about the basics of chocolate. Now, when people are thinking about baking with chocolate, what are some of the things that they should consider, just like from the beginning, if they're going to start making stuff from scratch? And remember, I was going to say, Kelly, this is it's an open conversation for those of you who are watching at home, but also for the participants in the chat. This isn't a Q&A where everyone has to be quiet. If you have something to say, to jump in, feel free. Just realize that Google, there is a little bit of a delay, so sometimes that happens. But this is supposed to be a conversation. So what do you think about the chocolate?
I think fair trade is really important. Chocolate that's fairly traded, because a lot of people don't talk about the problem with child slavery, and I think it's super important for people to talk about it. Talk about it! Child slavery is a problem in chocolate, so I always buy fairly traded chocolate, and I also think that higher chocolate content, like 70%, and I personally like 80, but 70% is also really good. More chocolate, because the FDA standards for milk chocolate and even bittersweet chocolate are ridiculously low. Milk chocolate has to have only 10% of cacao, and bittersweet is only 35. So it's mostly hydrogenated oil and sugar and milk. And I think it's what really gives chocolate a bad rap is the other stuff that they add to it. So I think that the better quality, where you buy it, and the percent of cacao is really important.
it's definitely really important also the origin that the chocolate comes from. So, for instance, there was mention of green and blacks before. So, Kelly, you were mentioning green and blacks, and I think that green and blacks, because their origins are Dominican Republic, you get a distinctive flavor. So, if you want something unique and delicious in your bake, go for something like green and black 70%, and know that it adds this dried cherries, slightly acidic flavor to all your bakes. So if you have it in a brownie, fantastic, or in a cake, in a mousse. But also, if you're not a huge fan of that, you might want to go for something like a Peruvian origin or some other origin. And also, people like Mast Brothers and Askinoizy, they're often buying direct from farmers as well. So definitely very important to be fairly traded. The Ivory Coast is rife with kidnapping and child slavery. And it's still going on in 2015. CNN has done something on it. I've written about it at the Huffington Post. Child slavery is a massive, massive problem because we're not willing to pay enough for our chocolate.
And the companies, the big companies, the chocolate companies, really aren't doing anything. They're kind of ignoring the whole thing. All the big, most popular candy manufacturers, you know, that have the most money and power to do something are really ignoring it.
And it's in their interest as well because as a commodity traded on the open market, the price of cocoa is fixed by traders. So it's almost impossible to pay more unless you're someone like Green and Black and you buy direct from the Dominican Republic. And Green and Black is owned by Mondelez, which is a large company much like Nestle and Cadbury. So, you know, they're a big company, but they own a really good brand in Green and Blacks, and they're still busy working with farmers in the Dominican Republic. So definitely someone to support.
Now, Jess, what about you?
When I'm going to bake with it, I definitely like to consider the origin because I think that what's so important is being able to taste where that chocolate comes from. I love when you can get a fruity note or a smoky note or anything like that. And I think that it's really important to consider those options when you're making a recipe. If you want it to be super sweet and over the top, not really anything you're going to be too concerned with, but if you're doing something like a truffle, or in my case, I'm infusing alcohol, I also have to kind of consider what flavor notes those different types of chocolate are going to give me and how it will pair well. You know, I'm not going to want a super fruity chocolate to go along with a bourbon-infused truffle. You're going to want that smokier one. So it's definitely something important to consider.
Now, what about like the average home baker who decides that they're going to bake with alcohol and chocolate? What is there a like go-to chocolate that they should try for the first time if they're thinking about it?
I've had the best success with dark chocolates because it's alcohol is such a great emulsifier. You know, if you screw up your ganache or your truffle or anything like that, add the booze. It's going to bring it right back for you, and you can actually be pretty fearless when incorporating alcohol into chocolate. It's not like a creme brulee has been my most difficult. So chocolate kind of is one of the best ones to experiment with and really go crazy with infusing alcohol for the home bakery.
And Nichelle, do you bake with chocolate a lot?
Sorry.
I was like, oh, she muted herself.
Yeah, I muted myself because I was looking at the conversation on Twitter.
Awesome.
I actually love making chocolate ganache frosting. That's when I normally use chocolate. And then another thing is, speaking of brands, I was sent Pasha's allergen-free chocolate chips that are used for baking, and that's a good one for baking. And it's allergen-free, and they have a dark chocolate. I'm not sure the percentage of cacao, but I know it was a dark chocolate.
It's really awesome that more companies are providing dark chocolate chips.
Yeah, I mean, and I was snacking with them when I wasn't baking with them. I was like, oh man, I want some more because they're just great to have while you're working.
You know, my favorite is, because they've been a sponsor of Tech Munch for so long, is Scharfenberger chocolates, because it was the first chocolate that I discovered, and I don't experiment with a lot of chocolate, but it was the first one I discovered that when I made these chocolate ganache balls that I would put inside the cupcake, they would not melt like the rest of the chocolate. It would just kind of go into the cake. You could actually see the ganache like with the after you baked it. Any good advice for chocolate for when you're baking it into something so that you still get that creamy texture?
It sounds to me like the ganache that you made that melted might have had a very high content of sugar, and maybe that contributed to the way that it was melting. I like to get the higher percent of cacao butter. I make truffles with cacao butter. They're in my Chocolate Lovers book, and they're super easy. They have like 4 or 5 ingredients, mostly cacao butter, sweetener, and cocoa powder.
You know, I was using bittersweet, so maybe that's was the problem. Maybe it wasn't totally dark. Yeah, no, it's strange. It was the first one I discovered. Now, I want to talk about cakes. Are there some basic, they talk about like using good flour. They talk about, do you flour and do you grease your pans? Are there things that you need to consider when you're baking cakes that when you're baking with chocolate that maybe the average home baker won't remember or doesn't know? Anything that you guys can recommend?
Well, I mean, the more you bake with the better, with high quality chocolate. I mean, I use Valrhona, and that's what we use at the bakery for almost everything, and it's very good. And I was just tasting some different pastilles de Valrhona the other day, and there were, many different very dark wine, above 75%, and they all had such distinctive taste and flavors. And I think that the better quality chocolate you use to make either your ganache or your creams or whatever, the better taste you're going to have and the better quality product you're going to have. Like, for example, at Hotcakes, we make tarts like that are, I don't know if you see it, the little chocolate ganache tart with pure Valrhona, 85% chocolate, and they are extremely, extremely good. And then we do a lot of French entremets that have, I'm going to show you another one here.
You guys are making me hungry. I'm like,
time to have some chocolate.
These are little French entremets, and we make them all shiny on top, and they're made with several chocolate mousse. So this one is a royal, so it has 13, and it's got dark chocolate mousse and light chocolate mousse. So the more you use high quality chocolate, then the better your flavor is going to be, For everything for Easter, like right now I'm doing all these Easter eggs, exactly like we do them in France, like I just bagged this one this morning. Let me show you guys. And this one is
to get the
milk chocolate egg. So we just made that, the little milk chocolate egg, and it's filled with goodies inside, And it's filled with, it's a tradition in France, for Easter. Here in America, you've got the Easter bunny. And then in France, we have the Easter egg. And it's like the bells from the church ring, and then they drop eggs. So every little kid in the morning finds an Easter egg like that in their bedroom, filled with little fishies like those. So this is called friture. Let me open it so you guys can see. And it's made with Valrhona white, dark, and light chocolate, and it's like, I don't know if you can see, it's like a little shrimp, and then you've got the little fishies, and you've got all of these things, and all of these are great.
Do you have a bakery in Venice? Because I'm not that far. I could be there in an hour.
Hotcakes is on Sentinel and Washington Boulevard.
I'll have to come see you.
Yeah. So right now, these are little eggs that we make, and this is the Valrhona milk chocolate. I don't remember the name of it. It's too bad. I didn't know it was going to be so specific. I would have given you the exact name of it. But this one is really good, and I was actually doing them yesterday with a tempering machine, and every time I was like coating the mold, and then tapping it, and then cleaning it, and then I was licking my spoon, and it was just so good. I was like, oh God, this is so good, so creamy. I love milk chocolate, so I just love milk chocolate. I love dark chocolate too, but to me, milk chocolate is so good, And I know it might not be the best one for you, but That's what I like.
I love milk chocolate too. You know, I was going to ask you about the cake that it's glazed. I heard that if you use a blow dryer, you can make the cake shiny like that and on the chocolate. Is that true?
No. No. What you can do is that if you use a steamer, and to make your icing shine, it's all about the temperature of the chocolate. And the way something is going to shine is how well you have tempered your chocolate and what temperature you use your chocolate at. That's what's going to give the shine of the chocolate. It's not a blow dryer, it's not anything else. It's how well you've tempered it, how well you've tablé, meaning brought it down to a temperature, bring it back up to another temperature, bring it back down to another temperature, and then how well you've done that process, because that process, and I recently learned this with my French executive chef, that process breaks down the crystals that then gives you the shine. So sometimes you see chocolates and they'll be dull and they won't shine. It's because it wasn't well worked before it was put into do something, you know. And icings, I mean, the ganache and all that, you know, it's how well you do the ganache. This on top, you know, is not a ganache, actually. This is an icing that's made with pâte à glacé. And pâte à glacé is mostly cocoa butter. And so it's very shiny. And it stays shiny, and it's beautiful. Can you
hold that a little bit higher so we can see on the screen?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
You see? And I use a lot of shine, you know. I love using gold dust and things like that on chocolate. Like for Christmas, we did a lot of truffles, and we did a lot of herb-infused truffles like basil and rosemary and tarragon and all that. And then I dip them in different powders, and I use gold leaf a lot to make it look really pretty. A lot of our entremets are made and decorated with gold leaves and all that. So I think, you know, the more, I mean, chocolate, it really is an art. It's difficult to work, and the key to really make it beautiful is to know your thermometer and know your temperatures.
I have a question to that, if I can ask the pros. So for tempering, for a home baker like myself who stresses out about getting that perfect temperature, I don't have a tempering machine, what's the recommendation? What's the best way to get that temperature at home?
I think the way you do it is that, and I could ask my executive chef when he comes, he was supposed to be here and he can tell you. First of all, there are small little tempering machines that you can buy on Amazon. I've been looking, so I've seen some. The other thing is that you melt your chocolate with a double broiler. Then you put it on a stainless steel table and you cool it down to a certain temperature by working it with a spatula, with a metal spatula. And you work it and you spread it on the table and all that, and you bring it down to a certain temperature. Then you bring it back up to a different temperature. And then you bring it back down to a certain temperature. And then you have to keep it on the bain-marie, you know, double broiler, at 30.5, I think, degrees Celsius. And that's when it's going to shine. So I can't give you the exact temperature to where you cool it down to and where you bring it back up to, but that's the technique. And you can do that at home, because my executive chef was just doing that 3 months ago, because we didn't have a tempering machine. So he was doing it the old-fashioned way. And he was just spreading the whole thing on the table with a spatula. You thought he was making plaster, you know, and I was like looking at him and saying, what are you doing? He says, well, I have to bring it up and I've got to bring it back down. And, you know, he was telling me this whole thing, you know, that's what you do. So a tempering machine is great, and real tempering machines are extremely expensive, you know, but you can also temper your chocolate and then put it into a chocolate melting machine that will keep it at a certain temperature after. And then, you know, you're good.
From a home baking standpoint, I found that you can get a piece of marble from a shipyard, from where they cut the marble or the granite or anything like that, and generally they'll give it to you for free. And that's the best way to make it. It's the best. And you just use a knife and an offset spatula. And I actually bought an infrared thermometer at my local kitchen supply store for $30. And that's the best way to know the surface temperature of your chocolate. And I rely on that entirely at the restaurant, too. The only difficulty at the restaurant is it's always like 110 degrees in here, so you can't really work with it too easily. And the best thing,
the real challenge is the temperatures. Here in Southern California, the real challenge is the temperatures in the kitchen. It's just so hot, you know, like Like, for example, yesterday chocolate wasn't crystallizing; it was just not hardening because it was just so hot, you know.
Yeah,
So,
I've had to for chocolate in our.
we work a lot on refrigerated marbles. You know, you have a marble top that's refrigerated, and then it works great. But here, you know.
Yeah,
So,
you just get.
but yeah.
You get no one.
Now, Jess, when you're in the kitchen, because you're the lead pastry chef, what does that mean when do new recipes come through you, or how do you determine what's going to go on the menu?
We try to rotate things on a seasonal basis, so I really try to change my menu based on what's going to be available from our suppliers and things like that. Sometimes they're cocktail inspired, sometimes they're just kind of drummed up in my mind. One of my assistants she has celiac also, so she's actually been really interested in helping me come up with new ways of incorporating flourless recipes into my repertoire and things like that. But generally the recipes do come from me, but I welcome a lot of collaborative effort from my assistants. I love drawing from other people's ideas because rotating your menu 5 items every 4 months can be really overwhelming. Sometimes you draw a creative block and just don't know where to go and what to do.
I absolutely. I was thinking you just prompted something with all of these different like celiac and gluten-free and these different recipes. How is that affecting baking with chocolate? I think Kelly, because you have the paleo book. What's happening with the world right now? Do you have to adjust your recipe to make it chocolate friendly?
Well, I actually have no experience in typical baking with gluten and dairy. Before I was diagnosed with celiac disease, I was a Duncan Hines girl all the way, and I would, get my box. I got my chocolate fix out of the box. So when I found out that we had to change our diets dramatically, I taught myself how to cook using coconut flour and nut flours. But my most popular cake recipe, it's mostly cocoa. It's almost a flourless, like what Jessica was talking about, cake. And the cool thing with paleo is that there's this focus on nut flours and coconut, which are just naturally grain-free. And a lot of people who, like me, are celiac, or my daughter with special needs, even gluten-free flours have a type of protein. It's not always called gluten. There's only certain flours that are categorized that way, but actually all grains, even like brown rice, has a protein like gluten in it. So for us, just to use finely ground nuts and coconut has really just changed our life and gotten rid of a multitude of health issues and problems that we had, and it's delicious, so can't complain.
Judith, we haven't heard from you in a while, so anything you want to add up to this point, maybe from a previous question or anything you'd like to add?
I guess from my point of view, the one major tip that I would give if you're baking with chocolate, especially if you're looking at the percentage of cocoa, is that the higher the percentage of cocoa, the lower the added sugar and fat. So just be careful when you're adding them to your bakes about replacing fat and sugars, because if you're working with 100% or an 85%, your fat content and your sugar content is going to be radically different than if you're working with a 70. So for sure, make sure that you're checking that before you just go kind of in and gung-ho 85% or 99% and that's your bakes and just think it's a one-to-one. That, for me as a home baker, that was the most important piece of information I ever got.
Oh, that actually is a good point, because my husband likes dark chocolate and I like milk chocolate, and we have this constant struggle where if he brings home a bar of dark chocolate, I'm like, really? I want to let the folks know who are watching on Meerkat, we totally appreciate you guys being here with us. We're doing a simulcast of our Google Hangout that we produce every Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific. It's called Get Baked. And every week we have a new topic. So today's topic is about chocolate baking. I want to move to like brownies now, or cookies. Do you guys feel more of a draw towards cookies right now, or should we talk brownies?
Brownies.
Okay, let's do it. Natalie, do you have a question about brownies?
You know, that's the one thing. It's so simple, and it's the one thing that I can't get right. I can make cakes, I can make chocolate, I can make, many brownies. Whatever recipe I try, I can't get it right. What am
Are
I
you
doing?
following a recipe?
I
What
follow
is it you
recipes, and it's just the center is just never fully cooked. I don't know if it's the oven. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So
Yeah, I would do a tried and true recipe, a recipe that, has a lot of feedback and a lot of good reviews and is a tried and true recipe. I like to use nut butter because brownies are so fat, that's what we love is like that fat, and it's either butter or a dairy-free butter, or I like to use nut butter, and I think that's what makes them so irresistible and just awesome is that high fat content. And that's what makes it so moist and chewy, too, like you're saying, that yours haven't been baking through quite all the way.
What about the fudgy brownie versus the cakey brownie? Meaning, like, some people want the brownies to be more like fudge, and some pretty much is almost like a chocolate cake. So what do you guys think about that?
Fudgy all the way.
It has to be fudgy.
Fudgy!
And no nut.
What?
No nut.
No nuts at all. Oh my god.
No crunch, yeah.
Yep, no crunch. Just chocolate, chocolate, chocolate.
You guys
I
are.
like
What were you
doing
gonna say?
brownies with nuts.
Elfie,
I think the key to make them is not to maybe you're over mixing them. You can't over mix brownies. I think it's one of the simplest thing to make. You can't over mix it.
Here's my favorite recipe. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, and what is that?
Those are my mint chocolate brownies from my book.
Those look delicious. Now, Natalie has a killer stove. Natalie, what stove do you have? Is it a Wolf or what?
Ooh.
we just sold our house, though, Babette. I'm in another home right now, so I haven't had my hands in a kitchen in 3 months because we're looking for a new home. So
What?
I know. It's killing me. I have not baked for any holiday this year, and I'm dying.
Well, what was your stove so that they know that you at least were working with like a good piece of equipment?
I did. I had a Viking 6-burner range. It was fantastic. I had full countertops, and when I designed my kitchen, it was beautiful. I had a whole baking section. So I've done the tabling of the chocolate. I've done all of that. It's a lot of work, and I am such a perfectionist that if it's not perfect, I feel like I'm just a failure. So
I have another suggestion, not for you, Natalie, because it sounds like you have had an amazing oven. But a lot of people's ovens, they don't realize they're off temperature, and they'll get off temperature. I mean, you can recalibrate it, and then it could go back off again. So I always recommend people get an oven thermometer. They have them at the, Ace Hardware and Amazon, of course, and they're not expensive. I have 2 in my oven because I'm recipe testing all the time, and I'm scared to death that the temperature is going to be off. So that's another thing I like to tell people that are listening to this right now. Invest in an oven thermometer.
I have this also.
What?
I've learned that baking my brownies in a cast iron skillet has yielded the best results I've ever had in consistency. Because you get it all around on the cast iron. We actually have a dessert at the restaurant that we call the mashup. That's half of the brownie, half of the chocolate, and it's a big order. So it's super consistent every time.
Hey, Jess, your audio acts like it goes in and out and it fluctuates a bit. So when you talk a little bit slower because it may be that something is happening. I don't know what it is, but just because we want to hear what you're saying, so I want to make sure it sounds good. So just talk a little bit slower so that the machine can catch up to what you're saying. Because it kind of cuts out every couple of words a little bit, but we did hear what you said. Now, what do you guys think of when you see the chips, like, do you guys recommend like cutting chocolate yourself, or do you recommend getting the chips? Is that easier? Is there some advantage for cutting it yourself because then you can buy in bulk? What are
I
some?
think it depends on what you're going for. Wouldn't you guys agree? It depends on what % chocolate you want and the taste, like everyone was talking about, the different flavors.
Yeah, I always cut my own chips, always.
It kind of gives it a more rustic feel.
So I'm basically the laziest one of the group. I'm like the kind of person who gets the like spinach that's like been washed 3 times because it's easier for me to put it into my smoothie. So I really like those. If I don't have any of those shortcuts, I'm not going to do it. So I kind of feel like that allows me to be able to do that. So what are some of the common mistakes that people make when using chocolate? Because we probably have about 15 to 20 minutes left for the show, but I want to make sure some people who are watching on Meerkat, who are watching on Google+, who are watching on YouTube and on BakeSpace, that you guys make sure you have some real takeaways today. So what's some advice do you guys have? And then Nichelle, if you have advice as well, I mean, you're the co-host of the show, but you've been baking a lot.
Well, I would say I think that anything that you cook with bake with chocolate, I think it actually, you need to watch it a little bit more carefully. I think it actually bakes quicker. I don't know if the panel agrees with me or not, but I'll shave off a minute or two and check it before I would something else that didn't have chocolate.
Absolutely.
Jess, you agree?
Yeah, I do.
Why is that? What's the reasoning for that?
I think sometimes there can be a fine line between properly baked and burned, especially if you have cocoa powder surrounding your pans. That cocoa powder can, if it's not of the best quality, it can burn really quickly and give you a weird sort of chalky texture on the outside of your cake or your cupcake.
You remind me of, I'm thinking like chocolate chip cookies, where I like my chocolate chip cookies gooey, and I like them to be really soft. I don't like them to be hard and dry. What's some advice do you have? Because there is a fine line between when they're perfect and then all of a sudden they just burn, like a minute and a half more in the oven, and then it's like they're all ruined. Any advice do you have?
I like to use.
I actually bake them from frozen.
So do you freeze the dough first?
Yeah, so I actually measure out 45-gram balls. I'm really kind of anal that way. And I roll my balls, I freeze them, and then I freeze them in packs. So I only have to undo 1 or 2 or 3 at a time. And then I know they're exactly 18 minutes in my oven at a particular temperature, and I bake them straight from frozen, not flattened out or anything, and they become perfectly gooey in the middle.
Now, Judith, is that because I had read somewhere that they say that you should age your dough like 1 or 2 days, and it makes it better? Is that the reasoning there?
I think the aging of the dough, maybe not 2 days, because it'll start to harden up, especially if you've not got a complete airtight seal on it. So you'll get it will become hard and crumbly. It's good to age it for a short while in the fridge because it'll firm the dough up. The butter that has become quite soft and almost melting in the room temperature will firm up. It'll be easier to work with. But I wouldn't age it over too long in the fridge, like overnight or anything. It would dry out completely.
But anything that you put in the freezer overnight before baking it the next day will always come out better than if you bake it the same day. Like when we make all of the croissant from scratch at Hotcakes, and we make the dough, and then we make the croissant, and then we freeze them, and then the next day, you take them out, you proof them, you bake them. Same for the tartelette doughs. Same for the cookies. I do the same thing. All the cookies are made with an ice cream baller, and they're all in bags, and you take it out. And that kind of gives the time for the dough to rest. And it's not aging, but it's resting. And then, so everything kind of after just osmosis itself together, That the more you can leave it time in the freezer, the better.
That's totally the opposite of any theory I have. Usually it's like, I feel like cookies. I'm going to make them now, and then I'm going to bake them as fast as possible and possibly eat some raw cookie dough. Do you guys, everyone else on the panel, do you guys do it like that? Do you do it overnight, or what's the... Kelly, you're
No, but I don't know how it is with gluten baking because I never did that. I don't have any experience. I can't really say.
Well, there's also a very big difference of baking at home and baking for a bakery, like a commercial bakery, like hotcakes. It's a total different ballgame, you know. I mean, there's, you know, you can't just make indirect and bake and have it ready for the customer. You have to work with 2 or 3 days advances. Otherwise, you're overwhelmed and you have 50,000 million people in the kitchen. You know, I mean, you also have to think about how you're running your business. So that's just something you can't. There's really two drastically different way of baking when you bake at home and when you bake professionally. It's very different.
Hey, Natalie, what about you? What about your experience as a home cook baking?
I do freeze my dough. I use a little scooper and freeze them individually, and I'll bake a batch that day, but then I'll leave that in the freezer and just bake as needed for the kids when I have a kitchen. But yes, I do that. I think it's a great way. And then there's always frozen cookie dough to bite into as well, so that's not a bad thing to have.
You know, Jess, we cut you off. You were saying something, and I forgot where we left off, where you were going originally. But I think it was when I was asking if you had any advice for cooking. Did we finish that?
Oh, I was just saying that I found that cast iron was the best at conducting an even temperature for baking things like cookies and brownies, because at least professionally, ovens can kind of have hot spots and cold spots, but you can even heat up that cast iron before you deposit your batter and cook it a little bit before it even goes in the oven. You get that even crust on the bottom and then just let it do the rest of the work.
Yeah, that's great for cornbread.
Exactly, yeah. As long as it's a well-seasoned cast iron, you're probably going to have like 99% success. I absolutely love it. I've done that way for the last 3.5 years at the restaurant. So,
I also like to bake brownies and cakes in ceramic or glass, oven-safe glass, and I think that it's not probably to the extent of cast iron, but I think it does have a more even than some sort of metal would, because metal's thinner and not as even as I think glass and ceramic.
Nichelle, has anyone chimed in from Twitter with any questions? I want to make sure we get to.
No, but I just wanted to give a shout out to Java Cupcake, who is watching from Germany. She's a contributor to Cupcakes Take the Cake. Betsy, who's actually an expat who's living in Germany right now. And Robin Watson. Oh, she did have a question. What's the best alcoholic beverage to pair with your chocolate desserts?
Robin. I think that bourbon goes super, super well with chocolate. I think if you do, an old-fashioned or something with a little bit of orange liqueur in it. Orange always pairs really well. Honestly, anything fruity goes nice too. It's kind of a really wonderful and versatile ingredient. You can even have a chocolate martini with your chocolate with it. Really blow it out. Or you can do an alcoholic chocolate milkshake, which is something that we're going to be moving on to at the restaurant. Beer milkshake with different types of ice creams that we'll do. And peanut butter stouts will go really well with chocolate ice cream and things like that.
Hey, Jess, will you be able to kind of put together like maybe 3 alcohols that we should try with chocolate, and then tweet that out with our hashtag getbaked, so that the folks, because your audio breaks out a little bit, and I want to make sure people could hear that. And I know you said bourbon, and I would love to hear what the other ones were, but maybe if you tweet that out to us, then we can share that as well. Okay. And if you have any recipes too, like if you guys have anything posted or pictures, add that to it as well. Now we have about 10 minutes left of the show. I want to make sure we get to like 3 tips from each panelist. So Elfie, do you want to do you want to give 3 tips that you think people who are thinking about baking with chocolate should take away from this conversation?
Well,
she's mute. Okay.
Definitely the quality of the chocolate you buy. Of course, if you're going to go to the market and buy, the whatever Hershey or whatever, they forget it. It's never good. You can't do that.
Don't do that.
Never, I do love all these chocolates, like those fair trade chocolate, like Kelly was saying, too, when I bake at home or when I eat them just like that. I do think they're very good. And I love those. Now, for me, commercially, of course, I use different brands. I mean, I mostly use Valrhona. I think also a very important thing with chocolate is the way you melt your chocolate. A lot of people melt their chocolate in the microwave, and then they over melt it, and then they cook it instead of melting it, and then it kind of becomes kind of caramelized almost they burn it, and then they add that to the dough, and then it doesn't come out good. No wonder. That's one big thing. How you melt your chocolate is very important. And then the third tip, I don't have a third tip. Those are my 2 tips, really.
Those were good.
Yeah.
You don't even think about that when you're melting your chocolate. You don't think how it's gonna. I mean, I don't think how it's gonna.
I've had some bakers working for me, like doing cream cheese frosting, and all of a sudden they're putting the melted chocolate into the cream cheese, and all of a sudden I have a cream cheese frosting that's full of speckles instead of it's like a leopard cream cheese frosting instead of being nice smooth chocolate. And it's just that the temperature of their chocolate was just not right compared to the cold cream cheese, and and there's these type of things are extremely important, because imagine you make brownies and you melted your chocolate totally wrong, and it kind of burnt in the nuker before and it's very easy to burn it in that nuker or over the double boiler and all that, so this is a very important thing, how you melt your chocolate.
And water too, because it'll separate.
Yes.
When you're in your double boiler, when you're making, like in my truffles in my book, it's very important that it's all dry, all of your equipment.
Yes. That water does not go in it. It'll ruin it.
Yeah.
So now, Jess, do you want to give 3 tips?
Just be fearless about it. I know it's an expensive ingredient, but I think you learn best by failure and understanding why something didn't work and just trying to work with it. And I think another good tip is if you're unsure of which chocolate to use, get unsweetened and control your sugar content by adding your own sugar yourself. I really like to do a combination of granulated and brown sugar for texture and flavor. So I think just don't trust the manufacturer to do it for you. Make it your own and do it yourself.
Now, Judith, what about you?
I would say if it's good enough for you to eat, it's good enough for you to cook with. But if you don't like the way it tastes, you're going to hate it in your bakes. So make sure that you eat the chocolate that you're going to use in your bakes. Take time with your bakes. Chocolate is a fussy ingredient. Just like you have to leave your butter out and your eggs out so that they're not cold, in the same way you have to make sure that when you're working with chocolate, you bring it slowly up to heat. It melts slowly. When I make my brownies and things, I always put the butter and the chocolate together in the double boiler so that they combine in the double boiler and I don't have to worry about it splitting. And also, a mistake I've made, top tip, let the chocolate cool. Even if you're worried about it hardening, don't. Let it cool before you add your chocolate to your eggs, because otherwise you get scrambled eggs and chocolate.
You cook your eggs.
That's a good point. It's a very, very good point. Now, Kelly, we didn't get to you. You started, but then we're going in a line. So, Kelly, what about you? 3 tips.
Oh gosh, I think we've covered so many. These lovely ladies have already said so many good things. I would just, again, point out that chocolate can be really healthy for you, and it, can even send out those relaxing endorphins. It can lower your blood pressure. It has magnesium, which most people are deficient in. So really feel good about eating it as long as you're eating, the right kind of chocolate and high quality. And also I wanted to point out, we're talking about baking, which is awesome, but chocolate can be used in savory as well. And I have 10 savory recipes in my cookbook, things like rub for ribs and chili, even a salad. I like to put cacao nibs in my salad. I like to put cacao nibs in my my smoothies. So I liked everyone else's comments about being fearless, and a lot of good suggestions and things there.
Now, Natalie, any suggestions? Any advice? Any advice for the home cook perspective?
Yes, there is an expiration on chocolate, so make sure to check that when you purchase it. Also, to store it correctly. Don't store it in the fridge or the freezer. It's not going to preserve it longer. The analysts tell me if I'm right or wrong, because maybe I've read the wrong information. But definitely store it properly, and the chocolate will be good to you.
Very good. Now, Nichelle, any tips?
Actually, I have a tip that's a good overall tip, because everyone's giving great tips and they're learning by doing. And so that you don't repeat the same mistakes, actually, why not have like a baker's journal? People write notes in their cookbooks, but most of us now are baking from recipes we find online. So if you could just write some things like, oh, I substituted this or added this or whatever, I think it'll help you, so the next time you bake something or cook something, it'll help.
I was just reading in the chat right now that Judith has a fridge just for chocolate. What the heck is that? is that like temperature controlled, or what's the?
Yeah, it actually is temperature controlled. So I've taken a wine fridge, and because the ideal temperature to store chocolate at is between 16 and 17 degrees, I actually have it set for 16 or 17 degrees all year round, and all of my chocolate gets stored in there, whether it's I don't store ganache in there because it's usually fresh and without preservatives, so it doesn't last, but 6 months to a year, you can store chocolate at 16 degrees. If it gets too hot, it'll bloom. If it gets too cold, it will also bloom. That's when the cocoa butter or the sugars separate out, and that means your chocolate is less than ideal. Good for brownies, not so good for eating.
Now that's when it blooms, is when it has like that weird crystallization on it, right? Like you can see it actually blooming. So for the folks who are watching on Meerkat or YouTube, I want to make sure everyone knows, because we're going to be ending the show in a second, but I want to make sure everyone knows where they can find you guys online. So, Judith, since you're already on screen, do you want to tell the folks where they can find you online? And are you living forever in London, like in England, or are you going to come back stateside anytime soon?
I'm actually Canadian, so.
Oh.
But yeah, I will eventually. I'll move back, but at the moment I'm staying in England, where there's an absolutely thriving chocolate scene. People can find me at mostlyaboutchocolate.com. I'm mostly about chalk on Twitter. I'm on Google+. I'm all over cyberspace, in your Twitters and your Facebooks.
Now, what about Elfie? Where can people find you online?
Well, they can find us at hotcakesbakes.com, and on Twitter, Hotcakes Bakes, and then Facebook, the same, Hotcakes Bakes, and we do a lot of Instagram and all that. And I'm at the store almost every day. I mean, I'm there every day. People will say that, oh, you're never there. I say, no, I'm there every day. Never at the same time, but I'm there every day.
You're in the back making. I could just see you with like a vat of chocolate, like.
I am. I have my bag of chocolate. I've been eating it the whole time.
Now, Jess, where can folks find you?
We're found at barleymashsd.com, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and it's basically just a food porn account. You just search Jess DiBona.
You know what's funny is because your audio goes out a little bit, it sounds like you just said it's just a porn account. I'm like, it's all good. It's all good, Jess. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Now, Kelly, where can folks find you? Because I don't think we didn't get to you yet, right? No.
I'm at the Spunky Coconut, and I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, all under the Spunky Coconut.
Awesome. And Natalie, where can folks find you? You're like nowhere, Natalie, except Facebook.
Nowhere, yeah. I'm not on those, unfortunately.
You're like
20. I took all your names.
Well, you're gonna. I think you're on Instagram though, right?
I am, but it's just personal.
You
That
are
is looking for a house. That's where she's
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, hey, Nichelle, you want to tell folks where they can find you?
Well, I've been tweeting while we've been talking from Cupcake Blog, so you can find me on Twitter there. I also have my personal Twitter. It's Niche, Niche. Cupcakes Take the Cake is the blog that I've been doing for about 10 years, and I'm also the cupcake expert on About.com, so if you look at cupcakes.about.com, I think, Kelly, I think I spotted a recipe that I might want to include in the upcoming post on cupcakesabout.com.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I was looking through your cookbook the other day, and I was like, oh, this is something I can use.
Which one?
I'll let you know. I can't remember which one. I had to flip through it, but I know it was something that looked appetizing. Your whole book looks great. And then we're doing Tech Munch, and that's on May 21st.
May 21st, yes. If you guys want to, we're taking our food blogger conference, and we're heading to New York City for our next stop. We do several stops over the course of the year, and it's techmunchny.com if you want to come check it out. We have amazing speakers, food photography, monetization, SEO, a lot of really cool topics. You know, I just realized that our Meerkat stream had ended, and I don't know why. So for those of you who are watching, if you're from Meerkat and you're catching the tail end, we love you. So we don't know why that happened. Our first stream, maybe you can only stream for a certain period of time and it resets itself. But I wanted to say thanks to everyone for watching. I want to tell you guys what is coming up next week.
We're off next week.
We are off next week for Easter. And then we have our episode 6 is a cookie episode. So we're going to be talking about cookies. We have Figtail who's joining us. Gail from One Tough Cookie is joining us.
Oh, I love Gail.
Yeah, she's great. Monica, who's the Moon Muse, is joining us. And then we also have Lisa from Gluten Free Find also joining us as well. So make sure you guys tune in. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Subscribe to us at all these different places. And you'll be the first to know when we have our new shows. So thank you, Nichelle, for being a wonderful co-host. And thank you to all of our panelists for joining us. Will you guys come back on the show again?
Definitely.
Of course. Good. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time. We will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.